Cool. Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guildhouse. This is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the DMs Guild and surrounding space. And this week, I'm overjoyed to be joined by Bryan Holmes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How are we doing this week?
Doing pretty good.
Nice. Well, again, let's not mess around. I mean, this again. I pride myself on this podcast being strictly business and strictly professional. So for the people listening and stuff like that, in case they haven't heard of you and kind of some of the stuff they've done, yeah, what sort of things have you been throwing out on the DMs Guild?
So hopefully I'm known for good things on the DMsGuild, but I think mostly I do a lot of collaborations. When I first started out, I was pumping out like solo works, like 2 a month for an entire year. And then I got invited to my first collab, and I haven't stopped doing collaborations since. So things like Hellbound Heists, Blood, Salt, and Bones, which was the Salt Marsh tie-in, Mythic Encounters, which was a huge, I was blown away by how successful that was. I mean, just working with other people. Hopefully it's not coat sitting on, being dragged around, but solo works, things like Feats of the Forgotten Realms and Blessings. There was a book, Gift to the Gods. It was all about blessings for the Forgotten Realms.
So you mentioned you were was it pumping out 2 a month for about a year? So like how long ago? Like when would you say that you published your first product?
So I've been publishing for 3 years now.
Wow.
Technically 4 because it was like December, but like 3 days before the new year of 2016. So my first real stuff went up in January of 2017, and that whole year was just making little 20-page background supplements for different races. And then after a while, it just became Collab City.
So I guess so before we go on to the as you mentioned there before we arrive at Collab City, as we are on the outskirts of town, what was it about backgrounds that kind of what kind of drew you into sort of writing your own products?
Knowing what the space of D&D is right now in terms of races, back then I really liked the sub-race system, the idea that you pick this main thing, but then you also customize your character a little bit. Customizing your character is all what these things are about. So it intrigued me. But with the Forgotten Realms, there's a whole bunch of elves that weren't in the core rulebook, which is fine because not everybody knows lore. And I thought it would be fun to take those lesser-known elven subtypes and bring them in using those rules. And then it expanded to dwarves. And I'm like, okay, well, I can make a dwarf book. And then why not halflings? Because there's ghost-wise, and we didn't see those. And then I'm like, what about all the other races no one knows about? Like, we didn't have Erikaroka at the time, so why not do that? And then it started getting even deeper. Like, there are, I think, 7 different types of orcs. And so each background race became more of an investigation into the variety that exists within all the races of the game and giving you their narrative backgrounds rather than just here's +2, here's dark vision.
Interesting. So I guess it sounds like, again, you come very much from deep in the Forgotten Realms lore. I've
been playing since 94, 95.
Wow.
And so all the old settings, I like them, and there's lots of things that are not really, you don't want to bring back some of the worst parts of Ravenloft or anything today.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of those old gems that are just sitting there waiting to be shined up. Mm-hmm. Maybe just work them a little bit so that they're, usable now. But yeah, the Forgotten Realms was my first setting, and it's sort of the one that I fell in love with. The novels are great, and there's just so much storytelling to be done there.
That's one thing that I kind of find fascinating about, as D&D as a system obviously shifts between versions, especially when they sort of revisit lore and the timeline of events and stuff like that, of what kind of gets the attention and the focal point. Because, as you mentioned, there's so much, not to call them diamonds in the rough, but I guess lost treasures. I think that's probably a more appropriate sort of analogy of these interesting lore tidbits that designers in the past were like, let's put some effort into this, and then next thing you know, the next edition they're just like, nah, we're not going over there. Let's not worry about all these different types of orcs or whatever it is. I'm curious then, is in doing all the scouring of backgrounds and everything, is there one particular, I guess, maybe sub-race or background of group of people that you just like, I wish there was more, about this halfling family? Or
so halflings are cool. Ghostwise halflings are neat. They're slightly telepathic. Those are cool. But I think my favorite, So of all the books I did, the most successful was Children of the Plains, Alternative Genasi, and Asimar and Tieflings, and this was before the was it Volos or Mordenkainen's introduced more Tieflings.
Yeah.
But and not that they did a pretty fantastic job, but I really liked going into all those, like, hey, here's a planar halfling, here's a planar dwarf, and that was exciting and successful. So maybe people are really looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite is actually there's a group of orcs called the Odonati or Ododonti. They're peaceful. They went, screw this. I don't really believe in being a war-like race.
Yeah.
I want to be peaceful. And so they just kind of live in this valley, this hidden place where the Earth Mother Chantea watches over them. And they're just peaceful orcs. And that's cool.
And I guess it's always a case of like everyone's not again. I don't want not to jump into the orcs debate as but I mean again it's a case of like, well, yeah, here is a in-law example of orcs not being just, you know, is it Grumsh or Grumish?
Grumsh, yeah.
Yeah, Grumsh. So again, apologies to any orcs out there for my pronunciation of. But no, yeah, no, exactly. No, that sounds adorable, and yeah, I like the idea of like. I particularly like the combination of taking a specific deity and thinking about the sort of like what sort of followers naturally lend themselves to sort of worshipping.
I think for myself, I really like seeing the diversity. Like if humans can be literally anything, that's really cool. And seeing what literally anything means for another humanoid race. Like, yes, halflings are stereotypically small and they're nimble and that's cool. But like, if you could show me what their culture is like, the ones that grew up along flooded riverbanks, and it's like halflings aren't good swimmers. So what is their culture like compared to those who grew up in Waterdeep, where they don't have to worry about that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
And those little cultural differences are so much more textual for a character.
Yeah. And also, you know, it's kind of it's more power to the player to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm a river halfling. Swimming is my forte. I'm here to swim, and just kind of throw them into what is it? I suppose the Saltmarsh is probably the most swimming appropriate adventure for them. Well, no, fantastic. And then yeah. So I guess you kind of mentioned you kind of got hooked on the not the drug of collaborations, but you know, what was your first collaboration? Like, what was the gateway, so to speak?
First collab was Blood, Salt, and Bones. So Chris Walls and RP Davis came to me and they're like, hey, we had a couple people drop out and we need some help. Do you want to make a boat?
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't want to make a boat? Boats are cool. They were making really unusual boats. So some people made like elven icebreakers, or there was a Modron cog that was just like, it's just a cog that floats. Cool.
Yeah.
So I thought, sure, I'll do one, and I did it's a hermit crab that's gargantuan, and the back half of a boat is what it stuck its back end into.
Oh, that's incredible.
And so it's a bunch of pirates who have tamed this giant crab.
That is immediately sort of incredibly sort of evocative, and just like seeing a ship like that along the sides of it, it's like, well, that's either you're like, I want that crab, or you expect him to be sort of like traveling salesman. Yeah. No, incredible. And then also wasn't I believe, what was it, the Hellbound Heist was shortly after?
Yeah, so with Hellbound Heists, there was a bunch of us on the unofficial creators Discord that were like, hey, Avernus is going to come out later, and I've got this great idea for an adventure, and I'm going to call it Hellbound Heists. And someone else is like, oh, I was already using that title. And someone else, oh, yeah, me too. And it's like, well, if we're all writing Hell adventures, why don't we just pool our resources, put it under the title, and we just make a whole bunch of adventures. And there was 9 of us, and there's 9 layers of Hell, so we figured, why not each write one adventure for each layer? And yeah, it sort of tumbled into this giant ball of, it's working really well, let's contact Lisa, let's see if POD is available for us. And sure enough, she was happy to have us. So it turned into what could have been a year-long project, and the moment we got POD as an option, it became a 8-month, we need to crunch right now and start, and because it was kind of unofficial and just a bunch of guys getting together saying, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
I jumped onto leadership and said, all right, someone needs to organize it. This is what we're doing. And, you know, everybody was great. Like, everybody was fantastic because it was, for a lot of them, their first collaboration. And it was only my second, but I had RP Davis and Chris Walls to give me advice, and it went real smoothly. And we're all really happy with it.
So actually, one of the things as well. Again, I guess rest in peace to the POD system evolved on the DMs Guild. But I'm curious. I've always heard obviously the difficulties of making a product for print on demand. Is this a product that kind of ran into any of those difficulties, or was it pretty smooth?
No. So basically, and I don't know the intricate mysteries of how they do things at OBS, but
Mhm.
as far as I can tell, this is what it basically comes down to. Is your product one that's similar to something that they already sell? Like, do adventures sell X well? Cool. Have you written adventures before? All right, then we'll already look at your thing. And does it tie into something that either they can market as like a, we're doing a theme,
Yeah.
or one of Wizards of the Coast's hardcover books? If it doesn't really fall under there, it has to be something that they think will be spectacular,
Mhm.
because they're not going to make much money on it if they just allowed everyone POD.
Yeah. Oh, so actually, funny enough, so I meant more in like a technical sense as the actual printing stuff. Yeah, actually being I imagine like because print on demand at the moment, I believe the system is it's very much case by case, and it is
Yes.
you kind of have to like fit a niche or again be sort of like again. Well, I must admit, on paper though, to be like, oh yeah, no, we're here, we're a huge sort of gang of esteemed creators, and we've got 9 adventures kind of all bundled into one. It kind
So
of
that was one of the benefits.
yeah.
9 adventures. Page count is very important to them. If you look at most of the books that are printed, they have a page count of somewhere between like 60 and 150 pages. If you go well over that, you may actually not get it just because it's expensive to produce a book and sell at a good price point.
Yeah.
And if you're less than that, it's not worth the time to print it.
Yeah.
There are a few smaller examples of that like where they're 20 to 30 pages.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if your concept would align with it fits in the page count, cool. If you have a large number of creators, they can count that you've got a diverse set of voices. If one person comes forward and says, yeah, I want a POD, they probably won't get as good a shot at it just because it will appeal to a smaller crowd.
Yeah.
The more voices you have, the more advertisement, the more people wanting your stuff.
Yeah.
So those technical, like, yeah, the page count and color and all that stuff is a technical limitation, but that falls down on your layout editor or your layout artist, and there's some guidelines for them to follow. It's not too hard, knowing if you're in your margins or whatever. But yeah, the hard part is page count and your team, and does it align with their vision?
So I guess did you run into like a particular page count problem then when you had to sort of worry about like interesting?
So
No,
Hellbound is 300 pages.
Wow, okay.
So at 300 pages to sell a book, like you're dividing it amongst 9 people to make sure it's worth their money. We're looking at a pay like the at the time people said 10 cents a page, whatever. Once you get the extra cost from the guild on there, it was looking like it was going to be an $80 book, which you can't sell that. When Wizard of the Coast is selling their books for 30, you can't charge that much money. So working with Lisa to try and figure out what good price points might fit with that, and then going back to the team, that was the hardest part. She had already given us the go-ahead with no page count. We were very lucky that at the time they were experimenting with POD, and they were kind of letting more people in without meeting the criteria.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't worried about page count at that time. But if someone was starting a POD project now, I would try and recommend don't overwork yourself and give the customer too much, because then you're really shorting yourself on money. Like you're going to be, I think, Hellbound sells for, I believe, $23 for a hardcover or something like that. And I make like $1.07 off of it. And
which, I mean, was it split across, all the authors and sort of layout people and stuff like that? I mean,
it takes its toll once you divide it up, and to make it worth your time for the amount of work you're going to put into it, don't go for the 300-page book unless you have a really solid concept like that Monster Manual Expanded.
Yes,
that was brilliant. They did great on that. And 1 or 2 people, I think, like it's incredible. Yeah.
And no, it's fascinating. It's weird to think, especially as like the sort of like the tier, not necessarily like a tier system, but like the nature of like creating products for the DMs Guild. How the gap between just releasing digital projects to now going to like I want like a physical copy. How much that adds. Like again, it feels like it's a huge undertaking just for what seems like, oh no, I've got the thing. You just need to print it. Just put it in the printer. But no, it's not. There's so much more to it.
I will note that all the things that I've said so far specifically apply to the DM's Guild.
Mhm.
For anyone wanting to go OGL, SRD, and hit up Drive-Thru RPG, things are much lower there, but the cost goes on to you. So the DM's Guild, they cover your cost of proofs. They cover your cost of going back and forth.
Interesting.
So for them, there's a bigger risk on you making a POD than if you do it on Drive-Thru RPG, where you go, the margins aren't right, I've got to fix them, and then I have to buy another proof. It comes out of your pocket.
I guess I wonder again. I wonder if it's for the DM's Guild. It's again. I imagine like some sort of contractual agreement that obviously anything printed through the DM's Guild has to have some level of like scrutiny behind it.
Yep. Lisa said that they have a person there to check proofs specifically. So I know of at least one person who's over there doing that. I'm sure more things too.
Well, again, thank you so much for the sort of like candid, almost like post-mortem of the sort of the print-on-demand process and stuff like that. And then sort of following like obviously like Hell Van Heist and his Blood, Salt and Bombs, you kind of sort of continued the sort of like collaboration trend and stuff like that. I'm curious, have there been some like sort of like personal projects in between, or are you just like, no, I'm all aboard the collab train?
So I did do recently Morg, who is a hill giant vampire who he lives in Icewind Dale. He lives in Crypt Garden, but I thought he would work perfectly in Rime. Yeah. Actually, when they revealed the picture of the giant owl creature on the cover of Rime, I thought it was going to be Morg.
Oh, really?
And we had just come off Mythic Encounters, and so I'm like, I would wonder what would look like if I had statted him up, and I did. And it was cool. And then they revealed it was Oral, not Morg. And I'm like, well, why not just publish this anyway?
Yeah.
He
can visit. He can just pop over.
Yeah. I said it wasn't a collab, although I did everything I do. I still pay for an editor because while you can self-edit, I don't believe I'm a good editor. So I'll pay someone to do that. Mm-hmm. So even though solo, I still have to thank Steve Fiddler for doing the layout on that. And did I get Sadie to do? I think I got Sadie to do the editing, or it might have been Cassandra, another one of the guildies. I like spreading the money around and making sure everybody gets a chance at helping out.
No, looking at the product page now, I believe you had Cassandra on that one. No, it's fantastic. I guess I do need to correct myself when I say any sort of personal projects, because you do reach that point of like where you say this is a product that I'm working on by myself, and then you're like, I am also getting someone to do the layout and editing and stuff like that. Yeah. And you reach a point where, I mean, it's personal in the fact that like in terms of like writing, it is only you, but you do reach a point where everything is a collaboration in one way or another. It's kind of hard to sort of like remove that element, because
if anyone wants to have advice, collab just because it lets you do more work. On the guild, you will, if you're interested in getting a financial return on the amount of work you put in there. And for people who don't, that's fine. Like when I started out, it was just about maybe someone else wants to read this, and it's not about the money. But if you want to feel like your time is worth the effort you put in and you want that money back, you have to have more products on the guild. There's no secret, if you make this type or that type of product, you're going to get that instant hit. Yeah. Some people do, some people don't. Mm-hmm. But if you have 50, 60 projects there, you're going to be making $4 or $5 a day just because a person will buy that or that or that. And when you collab, it lets you work on more things at once. Mm-hmm. I think I've got 6 projects right now that are just in various stages of development. One of them is mine. The rest is someone else's. Mm-hmm. So, like, I couldn't work on 6 solo projects.
Yeah, and that's kind of the surprising thing that sometimes I'm going to have to, like, remind myself, is the fact that when I'm looking at, like, saying, this month in particular, I'm just like, I really kind of wanted to kind of get, like, a product or two or something, out. And it's like, well, actually, no, I've got all these things that I have done that are just kind of, like, waiting in the wings. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. And even though right now I'm feeling like, I don't have anything to show, it's like, it's more of like, I don't know, it's like collaborations are like the slow burn of products. You could create something yourself and kind of, churn it out and kind of get it out there, and you get that sort of fast food kick. But with kind of collaborations, they do take a little bit longer, but then, I guess you don't want to take the pie out of the oven too soon.
If someone wants examples, though, of the other way around, of just doing it solo and doing everything yourself, ERF Jordan, Eleanor, she's fantastic.
Yes.
And if you look at her body of work, like 90% of it is solo and out 4 projects a week or like something like that. Like she's incredible.
Yeah, no, I think what is it? I think they are quickly approaching having the most titles like under like I think it's close.
I doubt it, yeah.
I think what is it? I know that what is it? Empty Black is up there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they've already been overtaken.
Oh yeah.
Then I guess kind of to kind of I guess pivot. So one of the questions I typically ask is kind of talking about like what your creative process is, but I guess to kind of tailor it more to like again, you specifically then. What is it about like a collaborative project that you look for in particular? Is it always like the pitch, or is it
For any project, it's narrative. If you're trying to tell me an interesting story, I'm interested. Like right off the bat. So one of the ones we have coming in soon, Cult from Icewind Dale. Again, this is to tie into Rhyme.
Yeah.
The Cult of the Shattered Peak. It's a group of people who are descended from Netheril who went, these guys kind of screwed up our world, and we don't want anyone else to do that again. And so it's their job to go around and, not job, the self-appointed task, to go around and collect Netherese artifacts, destroy them if they can, and stop wizards from abusing power. And so from a narrative point, that's kind of just interesting enough on its own. We can tie their story into Rhyme. We can give you them as an organization. So if you don't want to use Rhyme, you can use them anywhere else.
Yeah.
There's a couple magic items, a couple feats, so it's got some variety for pretty much anyone. That sort of like, here's a product I would buy. I think that's my litmus test. Would I buy it?
Yeah.
And often, yeah, I would.
No, it's interesting. I'm also a big fan of if the projects that they are at the heart, they kind of like tie-in products to like a hardcover, but they kind of expand the scope like beyond the product to be kind of applicable. To have again this additional faction of like, again, I can imagine already a party kind of aligning themselves with them, going, yeah, let's travel the world, finding these, all these sort of artifacts and stuff like that. Which again that's a campaign hook in itself.
Yeah, I want to say there was an old D&D comic book, like from DC Comics or something, where it was a bunch of people on a boat who would go around the world finding powerful artifacts and putting them away in a vault, because it's hard to destroy an artifact and time is of the essence. So they had like basically a portable hole that they stored everything in, and just like even that was fun. Just the idea of going all around the Forgotten Realms, not just sticking in one little place.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm so again, I say this, but I'm a 5th edition baby, and just being a 5th edition baby, it does kind of like limit you. Well, doesn't limit you, and stuff like that. But again, it's like I know the Sword Coast quite well. I can say that, but I must admit, I feel like it's almost like the Hobbit effect of like I know the Shire really well. Like I can point out, I know all the families in the Shire. Mount Doom, I haven't heard of that. That seems a little far away.
They have not published a lot for places outside of the Sword Coast, but that's okay too, because like Ed Greenwood, when it comes to the Forgotten Realms, says that there are just an impossible number of stories that can go on everywhere.
Yeah.
So, they stick to the Sword Coast, but the guild always exists there. I'm trying to remember Joshua's, the last name's not coming to me, is working on a Chisenta thing with a whole bunch of other collaborators. I know Steve has the Emeroon's Almanacs, so looking at the geographical situation all across Faerun. And you know what? There's a bunch of people who don't want to be in Forgotten Realms, and Eberron is a great book too. Yep. Eberron has got dinosaurs, so I'm already in on that one. Like, they win me over.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I know I'm loving the sort of the emergence of like essentially like I guess like like you mentioned, like the almanacs, the sort of like player primers, the trying to think if like there's any, or just like is it I always mispronounce it, but the gadgeteers, the gazetteers, yeah, sorry. Those the products like that, it kind of fills a niche of like, again, me being kind of honed in on the Sword Coast, like, oh, there's this whole other place, and just by reading that, you find, bring it full circle, you find those diamonds, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is an adventure that I could sort of like begin to write a product all sort of around. Interesting. So I guess you one of the things that I've kind of noticed looking across, I guess your I don't think menagerie of products.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't feel like you kind of like you're happy to write adventures, you kind of write items, you're kind of happy to write a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of customers out there. Some are looking for adventures, and that's great. Let them go find Hellbound Heists. Some are players looking for customization. They can go for feats.
Yeah.
Some DMs want to know more about the gods. Again, there's that Blessings book. Backgrounds can tell everybody, here's a new way of telling your story. Some of those background books have a lot of stuff in them, like feats or items or whatever. So just having a little bit of everything means that I'm not missing out on anyone.
And so as on a design front, then you don't have any you kind of like enjoy the design process of everything, then, or are there?
I do. Although I will note my inexperience at adventures really, really shows.
Really?
It's a lot easier for me to collaborate with people, and there's Steve, not Fiddler, the guy who does the player primers. I'm helping him with those and filling out all the tables. Well, it's very easy to fill a table with like a 1 or 2 paragraph. Here's something evocative for a player to build upon, and let the player do the rest of the work. When you do an adventure, there's encounter design, there's thinking about pacing, thinking about how much time something takes, character motivation. Like it's a lot more involved. And I learned that with Hellbound Heist, but I really haven't done an adventure since then. I will be doing one for Steve. The next player primer he wanted to do with me was
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, there's that the island Spellfold, where there's a whole bunch of wizards who say no one else is allowed to do magic, and this is where we live. And I remember from Baldur's Gate 2 how cool that was.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to return there. And so I want to set a little adventure there for him. That'll be my second adventure ever.
The one of the things that I find about adventure writing and stuff like that is across the spectrum of like you have encounter design, item design, spell design, monster design. In one way or another, adventure writing kind of tackles them all in one way or another.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, because at the very least, again, if you're not designing the monsters yourself, you're choosing particular ones to kind of fit, the setting and stuff like that. And that way you're always reading and combing through stat blocks to be like, okay, no, this kind of fits the thing, or like you're taking 2 separate stat blocks and just pushing them together until you kind of get. It's kind of interesting, and I guess to take adventure writing kind of out of the picture, then is there any part of product, like again, if we take items, feats, do you have like a particular highlight? Like what's your favorite to write?
So I kind of never want to write another spell ever again, just because I worked with RP on the encyclopedia things. Those are a lot of spells. So it used to be that, but class design is a lot of fun. There's a lot of people who say D&D is broken in different builds, right? Like Ranger build just isn't fun or whatever. And I don't think the way that we're supposed to look at it is, do these numbers, are they bigger or smaller than those numbers? Instead, it should be, what sort of story does this archetype tell? And when you approach it like that, there's just so many options for different archetypes and different abilities. I've written 3 different kinds of necromancers for sorcerers and wizards and warlocks. And each one is different from the stock necromancer for wizard. And it's like, it should show that you could just like come up with different ways of doing things that aren't necessarily broken one way or underwhelming another. Maybe someone will prefer that. I know I've had a player at my table who really likes the Beastmaster Ranger, and everybody complains about that being the worst class. But I'm like, if they're having fun, they're not really doing it wrong.
No,
and so class design.
100%. Like, that's kind of like a sentiment. That's kind of a sentiment that's easy to agree with, because it's for a particular type of player. Like, again, this sort of stats driven. The idea of like, I want to maximize my output in terms of damage and stuff like that. Compared to, again, there are sort of players who like, I kind of want, like, again, I want to have like a band of like zombies around me, but again, the particular school of like necromancy just doesn't quite.
It's fine if someone likes that. That's good too.
No, exactly. That's why there's always like it's just, again, it's expanding the palette of experiences. and there's nothing wrong with having sort of more options. You did touch on an interesting point by mentioning the encyclopedia. So obviously, I'm aware that I believe that's a obviously like it's an alphabetical series of products. So you're releasing like each letter of the alphabet, and you're going back and essentially redoing spells of previous editions and making them compatible with 5th edition. Yeah.
Bob RP is taking care of 1st, 2nd, 3rd edition. He basically, the way he pitched it to me is he's only going over the material he has, which is all the core books. So he doesn't have like Dragon magazines or anything like that. I've got like I'm a huge collector of those, so I've got an almost complete collection of Dragon mags.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, do you want me to go back and do that? He's like, no, just the stuff that was in most people's hands, right? So like your core rule books and your supplements. And I said, well, I've got a complete edition of 4th, because when 4th came out, everybody didn't seem to like it, but I kind of liked it, so I bought all the books.
Yeah.
There was a lot of them. And so I have them all, and he's like, well, if you want to do the 4th edition ones and bring them forward, cool. And ever since then, we've been, I think it's 2 years now, and we're at G.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is an interesting, because I guess like it's ground level to kind of see the change of mechanics between the systems and how each edition kind of changes. Yep. Are there any sort of, I guess, what are some of the interesting mechanics of like, I guess, 4th edition, being that's the one that haven't necessarily translated as well into 5th as you might have liked?
So the simplicity of 5th is that they don't want you tracking a lot of things. You shouldn't be. Like, if something lasts a number of rounds, it probably isn't based on a non-static modifier. It will be, it lasts 1 minute, it lasts 10 minutes, they don't want that level of complexity. 4th edition wasn't afraid to do that. You could have 5 different types of conditions that lasted on you, and every turn you rolled for each one a 50-50 chance to see if it was gone. And so when you're bringing these spells forward, when they drop 5 or 6 conditions on someone at once, if it was like a really powerful ability, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. There's a few things that leave up areas and zones, which we kind of have that with things like fog banks and walls. So if it matches up to an existing spell, it's pretty easy. Otherwise, you're just defining radiuses. So like there's unsummoning. There's spells where if you have summoned a creature, I think the shaman got it a lot, where they could bring up a spirit. And then their abilities would let them get rid of the spirit to give all their allies in the area a buff for a number of turns.
Okay.
It's like, that's really cool. It doesn't directly translate to 5th edition, so I hope I bring across the flavor of it, but keep the stuff working consistently with how 5th edition words things. Yeah. I try anyway.
Yeah, again, it feels like, again, it's a very sort of interesting exercise. But I imagine, like, just by the nature of doing so many of those, you probably learn how to write 5th edition mechanics quite well. Is it? Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, the fact that was A B C D E F. So 5 editions now, and I imagine they're thick books. It's like there's a lot of letters.
Almost 200 spells per tome is roughly where it sets up. E had the largest number. Like, Bob and I thought we were going to do it in 2 months, and it took almost 8. Jeez. Just because of how many spells. It was almost 3 times the normal size of a book.
Again, that baffles me. It's like, again, you look at the, I guess, 5th edition spell list, and it is. I suppose it's hard to imagine that there are so many other spells out there that are just just left on the table, I suppose.
There are a lot of spells that come out to be like, this is so similar to an existing spell. So I say it's a complete, like, let's just take every spell and do it. But a lot of times it's like, well, there's Fireball. And then here's Fireball with 1 less dice of damage. Okay, we're just going to put like a header that says, here's all the spells that are kind of named Fireball. You could pick any name, but they all just do this thing over here.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I'm also a big sort of supporter of just like allowing players to flavor spells however they sort of want and stuff like that. It's, I think allowing
has really good rules for that. The chicken magic missiles.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I'm cursing in European because obviously Tasha's doesn't arrive until the start of December. So it's on its way. I'm ready. I just can't wait. But no, yeah, I 100% think, yeah, the idea that, there's ways of like non-mechanical changes, just like whatever you want the missile to look like. Also, there's smaller things and stuff like that, which is like, if a particular wizard and stuff like It's like I kind of want my fireball to do, I don't know, thunder damage.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm 90% sure it's not going to break too many things, because thankfully vulnerabilities are ill. They're not utilized as they should be, I think.
Really not.
Again, that's preluding to a product I'm working on at the moment.
I will note that Wizards of the Coast, like some of the higher ups who do game design, have said that they don't even consider damage type when they're balancing things. So yes, well, if you built a force-based fireball, it's not going to be resisted by practically anything.
Mhm.
They don't consider that enough to bump it up a spell slot or a spell level. So yeah, if your player wants to swap out cold for fire or fire for cold, do it. It's not going to hurt nothing.
Also, I kind of like the idea of a force fireball, just because force is just like the pure unfiltered magic. The idea of just this blast, just essentially it's a cannonball that then explodes into bricks.
I don't remember the name of it, but there is a force fireball in one of the Encyclopedia Arcanas that it deals like half the damage of a normal fireball. It's not that much in damage, but it pushes everyone away 20 feet from where they're standing, the radius of the sphere. And as you use higher level spell slots, rather than upping the damage, it ups how far they move. So like at 9th level, you pick a point and everyone just explodes from there and just gets thrown away.
That's incredible. And then using I suppose the additions like falling damage, that if they're going to be shoved like 90 feet and they can only move 10 feet, then they're taking.
Yeah. It's a d6 every 10 feet if they hit something. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. So even that, just playing around with the combination of spells and their damage types can kind of lead to kind of more interesting or just like unique sort of encounters.
And fun at the DM for those players who think they know, they know all the rule books in and out. They've been playing forever.
Yeah.
You have yourself a demon that's got a particular spell that they're already prepared for. Swap it out for one of the ones from the encyclopedias. They'll see it and they'll stop in their tracks like, oh no, everything I know is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I suppose you do have. So with 5 editions now, you do have about 1,000 spells to choose from. So, oh damn, no, that's incredible. So then I guess to kind of cycle back to your creative process as a whole, then, when it comes down to write something, whether it's part of a collaboration or anything really, do you have a favorite part of the project? Like, what do you enjoy?
Blocking everything out. I mean, that's your highest level view, right? Like saying, this is what our project is. You're not worried about levels or mechanics or anything. Just like, this is what we're doing. Coming up with ideas, especially if you just get to sit down with a group of people you really enjoy talking to and bounce ideas off each other. That's really fun.
Yeah.
And then once you get to the point, like in development, where you're just coming up to be ready to do your first edits and you can see everything all at once and you're like, this isn't ready yet, but I can already see what this is going to look like. And that's a beautiful feeling. I know those aren't part of the process, like that's not the creation, but usually I'm a writer, right? Like I said, I don't edit. I can do a little bit of layout. I'm not a big like there are people who are really good at it and it's intimidating, so I just don't. But yeah, like during the process, just either working with people or on your own solo and getting to that point where you can see the end is near is really good.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm a big fan of there's always with collaborations, there's always a few sort of milestones you hit, and I do enjoy being part of the collaborations where you write in your own sort of thing, and then at some point they get moved into the master document. Or in some cases, it's a case of someone just takes all your stuff and then you see it in layout, and that's just incredible as well. But when you see everything in sort of one place and you go, we've all done a lot of work. This is really incredible, and then you kind of think this is everyone's sort of concentrated effort now manifest. 100%. And then I guess on the other side of the coin, is there a least favorite part of any chance?
Definitely. So once you get to that point where you can see the end, there's a time where you are waiting. If you're not going to be part of the editing process, like if you're not project management and if you're not doing the layout or the editing yourself, you're basically done, and you have to wait to see that go from here to the end and be published, and that wait sucks. But even worse, the start of that, when you're getting close to your stuff being done and you come up with 3 other ideas and you just immediately want to go work on a new project, but you have other things that need to be done first, those little distractions, those are the worst. And I would say that that's not part of the process, but I think everybody goes through it.
I think it's that there is that weird ebb and flow of when you are done. Like again, you do your first draft, you send it off, you're like, well, I'm done, and stuff like that. Wow, and then you go away, you fine, now that I'm done with this, I can take on 2-3 more projects. You take on 2 or 3 more, and then you get an email going, hey, the edits are done. You can respond to those now. And you're like, oh, that's cool. You go away, you respond to the edits, and then it's a sort of you dip in and out of like, rejoining the sort of project and sort of, catching up and yeah, it's that sometimes that wait. I think it's the idea of just not general impatience, but it's fascinating to like be behind the scenes to realize that, oh, even though it's done, there's still so much left to do. It's not something.
There's that quote, the what is it, 90% of the project is the last 10% or something like that.
Yeah. Which again, that sounds like the way I do maths. So again, no, 100%. Awesome. And then I guess over the course of the 3 to 4 years that you've kind of been writing and working on everything, then is there a particular lesson that you kind of wished you'd learned earlier, or? It's
okay. That is okay to not work. If you ask people like Ryan Langer and Gregerson, Steve Fiddler, it's easy to get addicted to this. To go, oh, I'm working with amazing people, and I love working with amazing people, and I'm spinning these plates, and yes, something just went to editing, and it'll come back, and I'll have to do it later, but I just joined up with it. That's great, but it's okay to take a break, because you will burn out if you don't. And burnout sucks.
Yeah,
it really does. There was a number of times where I think at the most I've had 13 projects on the go, which I don't recommend.
No.
And it was to the point where I would wake up in the middle of the night having a nightmare about not getting something done. And so I'd go downstairs and work on the computer for 2 or 3 more hours before going to work. Like it's unsustainable, and I don't recommend burnout for anyone.
I think like any sort of project related stress, it's I guess not the unspoken dark side of collaborations, but the moment you are working with someone and stuff like that, again, I think it's natural to not want to let them down, or to disappoint and stuff like that. So it's just by the nature of collaboration, there is that level of pressure that you kind of adds up. Just because I guess it's for me at least and stuff like that. Again, I don't want to speak too broadly and stuff like that. Is I would hate to feel like I'm the bottleneck in the project at any point and stuff like that. And it's sometimes again it can't be avoided. And thankfully, I think as a whole, again, so many people in the community are very understanding. And I think if you were to be like, hey, listen, I know I said I was going to do X and Y. But I'm waking up 2 hours before work to, no, it's a tough one. Yeah. It's something weird that I think comes out surprisingly often. And I like in what is it? Yeah. Coming up to like, 52 people that I've kind of been chatting to, the fear of burnout and the number of authors who've experienced burnout it's surprisingly common, and not even surprising. That's the thing. I think everyone experiences it, and
it's a very positive environment working with this many people. And like I said, it's sort of addictive to create, to release, to see. Hey, here's a success. You want more. That you enjoy that. It's tangible. Mm-hmm. And so when someone says, "Hey, you want to work on this?" Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, You don't feel like saying no is something you ever want to do.
Yeah. I think I think I made the joke with Laura last week, the fact that you always say, I know I need to say no to some projects, but I will know when to say no. This one I shouldn't say no to. Yeah. I know when I should say no to a project and stuff like that. And it eventually always gets out of control.
It's a personal limit that takes people a while to learn. It's going to be something everyone does, but at least if maybe giving advice on this, someone keeps an eye out for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think it's a curious case of obviously it's so personalized, and like what you again, your mileage may vary of like what you can sort of and yeah, I think the best thing you can do is like, yeah, we can try and say keep an eye out for it and try and do your best and stuff like that. And again, after a number of big releases and stuff like that, it is all right to take some time off from if it's a hobby or if it's your full-time job, wherever on the spectrum you are and stuff like that. It's, I guess, the benefit of the DMsGuild. It's not going anywhere. Touch wood. Jeez,
You always had a fear that someone else is going to come up with the same idea you did and release it first, right? Like I've got a project it was supposed to come out in February, and maybe next year it'll come out. It was supposed to come out last February. It's a book of the Plane of Dreams, and in my home game, players cast the Dream spell, and it says, "Oh, you go into someone else's dreams," and that's cool. And I was like, "There's no guidance for a DM on how to run this. I want to write that." And so I sat down and I brought a few friends in, and they helped me write it out. And then I realized there's no art for any of this. There's no existing dream Planescape art. So I either have to commission it, which is expensive, or do it myself. And so that turned into a much longer project. And what was my point on this one again?
Well, I was going to say, like, trying to tackle the issue of like how do you draw a dream in their sort of nonsensical nature and stuff like that. Like the art that I can imagine for that would be yeah.
But it's okay to take your time on things. It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, I think eventually at some point, I think this podcast is probably going to develop into a therapy session for, which again I welcome wholeheartedly and stuff like that. Because yeah, I mean it's just the nature of how things are really. I did kind of, I guess, to kind of cycle. I keep cycling around, but to kind of like talk about is there any like in your catalog of products and stuff like that across like all the collaborations and stuff that you've kind of done? I don't know. Is there any particular one that you kind of want to highlight as being a very again just a very enjoyable collaborative experience? Or
so. If I have to pick just one, okay, so I'm going to pick the three. Hellbound Heist, because there's a whole bunch of people who worked on that, and they all deserve recognition. And not all of them, like, I had already published 20-something products before I started that, and with experience with collabs, they were all new. But for a lot of them, some of them went on to do great things. Justice Armand, who is a fantastic human being, he is great, and he has gotten his own acclaim. But some people who don't work like that and publish monthly, some of them publish infrequently. People on the guild who might have only gotten 3 books out still need that recognition, and a few of them worked on Hellbound. So I would point out Hellbound if someone is looking to just support smaller creators. Blood, Salt, and Bones, because it was good, but when Wizard of the Coast released, they did Ghost of Saltmarsh and then immediately announced a new adventure. And so boats kind of got swept under the rug. It's worth a look. It's a good book. And then Mythic Encounters, not because anyone doesn't know about it, but because I have a plan to bring back the Worms of the Realms. It was in Dragon Magazine. They had a bunch of these dragons that had a lot of personality. And I would like to do another Mythic Encounters book that just looks at those very high-level dragons and give you mythic versions of them.
So I guess actually, sorry. I was just going to kind of latch onto the idea of Mythic Encounters in particular. What was it about, like, because mythics, the mythic format or like the mythic creatures kind of stemmed from, was it Theros? I'm forgetting the name of I'm forgetting the full title for that.
Mythic Odysseys of Theros.
There we go. Yeah, so it essentially gave creatures essentially, I must admit, I'm going to show my lack of understanding. It's kind of like legendary actions, but different.
If I describe them, they're video game bosses. They have a second form, and when they take that second form, they get new actions that work just like legendary actions, but they didn't have them before that second form kicked in.
Okay.
I do want to say that project was really unique to me because when Wizards of the Coast announced that they were doing these mythic creatures, they would drop little previews but not actually say what was going on. But as they did, I noticed, hey, these match up really closely to there's the angry GM. He made this thing called Paragon Creatures. If you don't like his formatting, because he's kind of like, his brand is anger and outrage, I had taken it and made it much more concise and fit it into more 5th edition words, and a lot of people liked that. I shared it on Reddit. And I noticed that the rules were very similar to what had already been done.
Yeah.
So I went to Steve Fiddler and I said, well, what if we guessed at what their rule was going to be for Mythics? And we build our creatures in a really modular way that will allow us at the last second to swap out our mechanic for whatever they're doing. And it ended up being so close, we released the same night it went available on the guild. Like, it was midnight happened, and I think 2 hours later we had already released. So Mythic Odysseys of Theros came out, and here's 35 new mythic creatures for this rule that just got unveiled, basically.
No,
and that was really, it was a hectic and fast-paced thing, but it means a lot to me that it was that it laid out really well.
No, 100%, and yeah, there is a certain magic and act to, again, timing a product with a particular release and stuff like that. Again, I it's always that case of obviously I typically write adventures, and I'm always very timid to try and write an adventure before having read the hardcover myself. But Mythic Encounters is the perfect example of like, well, yeah, no, literally, they've kind of teased it enough that you can kind of sort of like, reverse engineer. And no, it's incredible. And yeah, I think again, 100% fantastic product and stuff like that. But would it be safe to say that the timing of the release definitely helped it?
Absolutely, like 100% that helped it, and that's one of the quirks of the guild. Timing is everything, but no one has a map for what will work. You're at the whims of people looking at the screen. So if you release a product day one, hour one, you could be really successful, and that could work out for you. Or 15 other people might have had that idea.
Yeah.
And then the new bar is full.
It's also that weird thing as well, because like I don't know why, but my gut reaction is that, like, I don't know what it is, that when you buy a new product or when there is a new hardcover, like if we take Rhyme of the I don't know, it just feels weird that people who buy this hardcover would immediately go, I should go on the DMs Guild. And I've got this hardcover of like new things that I haven't had time to run yet, but I should buy some more just to be on the safe side.
I can't speak for other DMs. For myself, when I get a hardcover, the first thing I want to do is read it cover to cover to make sure I understand it. And that's usually the first night I get it. And then I immediately go, well, how are my players going to approach this? Okay, they're going to skip stuff. They're going to miss stuff. They're going to explore off the beaten trail. It's going to be a good idea to have other products on hand to fill those gaps. The Adepts have the Encounters of series. I buy them without question, just because when you're exploring, they're good little random tables. And the guild creators come up with some really good things. Adventures, especially. So thank you for releasing Adventures, because often my players will be like, oh, we're going from A to B, but we rolled a random encounter, and I don't feel like it should be necessarily random. Like, oh, it's going to be 8 hours of our adventures just rolling dice. No, give me an adventure to just drop in. And I don't write adventures quite as well as I'd like. So for guild creators like yourself, I will take your stuff and I will put it in my campaign. Even though it's a hardcover, there's lots of room for expansion.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I guess. I guess it's one of the things where, like, if you actually like, what my gut reaction to be like, it's weird. It's actually not that weird. It's just, you just have to think a little bit more about it. No, fantastic. Then I guess looking a little bit more to the future. Then you kind of mentioned that you've got again maybe not 13 projects on the go at the moment. Hopefully less. But is there something off in the horizon, like a dream project that you have that is kind of,
ignoring the actual book dream project, in means. Hopefully that comes out. But no, so I've had 2 books that have been sitting in my mind for a very long time. Something I think D&D 5th edition is missing is late game customization. Almost all your customization for your characters, except for spells, ends at 3rd level, maybe a little bit further. If your DM allows feats, then you get a little bit more customization. But like, there's not much in the way of player agency for changing their characters mechanically in a narrative way. So I was looking at some of the older editions, and I saw the Immortal rules. And something I liked in 4th edition was that you got with the paths, the Paragon Path, and then the next one. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's from level 21 and up, and it would write you out of existence. Basically, you became a lone wanderer. You became a wizard who built their own subplane.
Yeah.
They would take you from wherever your adventure is to how you left the scene so that you can make a new character and start all over again.
Mm.
And I'm like, that doesn't exist in 5th edition. First of all, high-level gameplay, I don't know many people get past level 10 or 15. It doesn't happen that much. Maybe it's because players get bored. Maybe because DMs don't know how to handle it at that level, because Wizards of the Coast doesn't make high-level adventures. Mm-hmm. And even on the Guild, there's not that many of them compared to low-level adventures.
No, yeah.
So I kind of want to make a book that is from level 10 to 20 and beyond. I don't like the idea of just scaling the numbers up. Like, there's some really good epic level books on the Guild, but they all just take the numbers and they keep going up.
Yeah.
And if you're having trouble at level 20, you're going to have trouble at level 30 because it's the same problem. That's where the game is ending.
Yeah.
So I want to give more tools for telling stories at that level for DMs and more tools for character development at that level. That's one dream book. The other one, I want to write an adventure, and it's set in Waterdeep. And the mythal that is around Waterdeep, the protective magics, is being twisted. And everyone in the city is now singing. It's a musical. It's literally a musical adventure. I'm actually writing music, and I have contacted some. There's people I have contacted who do sing on like YouTube and stuff, and they're excellent. I'm like, could you be my villain? Because I want the villain to sing to the players. I want the players to have to sort of sit through this musical adventure.
That is incredible. I must admit, when you immediately said the protective magic of Waterdeep, I was like, oh great, so like, you know, the walking statues are like on a rampage again. No, you're like, people are gonna be singing. That's incredible. No, I honestly, I think I do love this sort of I don't know what to say. So the adventures that are just like so unique and stuff like that, and like they are like so out there and stuff like that, of like that they are like a singular experience that you won't get anywhere else.
Hope so. Anyway, by the time it comes out, maybe there'll be 3. I don't know.
Again, I don't think you can't rush a musical. I don't think. I don't know.
Especially when I have no skill. Like I didn't play a musical instrument before I decided to do this. So over COVID, I've actually been like picking up YouTube tutorials and on a mini keyboard, and so if nothing else, it was an excuse to learn.
Yeah, and I guess to answer like an earlier point, stuff like that is high tier adventure writing scares the life out of me. I don't think I'm yet well equipped to handle a high level adventure just yet. Just because, again, I just can't wrap my head around, like, you know, that the players have literally Swiss Army knife wizards that have, or, you know, they just have, you know, untethered power that is just like, I don't know, again, how do you kind of weave the challenge in? So I think, again, that if anything, that's a dream project of mine. I want to try writing like some, again, I don't want to go beyond 20 yet. I'm not as ambitious as you. But just to kind of play around in that sort of like high tier space and just try and see like how you can kind of maintain the challenge without it being sort of just wished away or whatever it is.
You got to make it fun.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Then I guess again, to kind of bring the interview around to like a close. You have been again involved in so many sort of fantastic collaborations, which is why my question about who in the community particularly inspires you, I feel, is particularly cruel.
It is. I actually wrote a note down in case that question comes up, is just to say, I help moderate. It's not my server, it's Ashley's server, but the unofficial DMsGuild Discord for creators. And like, there's not a person in there who doesn't inspire me in one way or another. Like, just watching the conversations go all day long, and it's like, there's so many fantastic people in the community. That would be mean to pick anyone out.
Also, I was going to say, this is actually, again, something that I am making my preparation for this interview, that I made like a mental note of. I've inadvertently, I think I've now interviewed every moderator of the unofficial and stuff like that. So again, that's ticked off my bucket list.
Congratulations!
Thank you
Hey,
very
the
much.
last one.
Again, always save the best till last.
Oh, there we go.
The flowery. But then I guess no. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat. Then, Bryan. My some of the closing question then is like in the near immediate future. Then, if there's anything that you're currently working on, and for the people listening, what's the best way for them to kind of hear about it and be able to get their hands on it as soon as possible?
I mean, watching the guild. Just go to the store and just watch. Right, that's what we all do. Twitter, Facebook. So my Twitter is Fallen Wyvern, just like Fallen and then the Wyvern, like the monster. So it's not hard. I will usually post all my DMsGuild stuff there. I do post to a few of the 5th edition Facebook groups. So, if you're already on there, you don't have to do anything. It's there. If you want to watch out for things coming soon, the Cult of the Shattered Peak with Steve Fiddler. That's going to be that one I'm excited for because I'm going to use it in my Icewind Dale campaign. Like day 1, I'm including it.
Fantastic.
There's a book with Isaac and Ashley, the Maze. We're going to do weird artifacts we found in the dungeon. They've already started the promotions for that.
Yeah.
Ashley's layout on the book is fantastic. I can't even stress it enough how beautiful that book is. Worked with Darren Kenny on a Marvelous Archetypes book. There's some comic book themed subclasses coming your way. There's a new Amaroons. It'll be the last Amaroons. The last one is coming out soon, and that's that. And then at some point, I'm sure one of my own personal projects will come out. Yeah. If I can find some time.
Yeah, no, again, I get. This is kind of what I mentioned before about being involved in kind of collaborations. It is, yeah, it's a case of like, oh yeah, there's all this stuff. It's going to be coming out really soon. So 100%, yeah. Please do give Bryan a follow on Twitter because you're going to be probably not inundated with new projects, but it's kind of the best thing really.
I have no intention of stopping. It's fun.
Can't stop, won't stop. And again, except for the recommended breaks every now and then.
It's important. Mental health. Take care of it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is we've got a message of this episode. It's good. There's a sentiment here. Well, no, again, thank you so much. And yeah, I've been Matthew Whitby. Yeah, you can find me at Whitby Writes. I think I have some stuff coming out soon. I don't know just yet.
Promote it. Well, you're here. You might as well.
I'm always of the mindset I'm gonna start yelling about it when it's actually out with a link. I've got some exciting stuff. I think two or three things that I should be coming out in the near future. Touch wood. And yeah, I will scream as and when those are available. Awesome. My very last question then, Bryan. How do we end a podcast?
How do I end the podcast? Do you got any 9th level spell slots we can cast Wish? I wouldn't wish this to end. I like this. I've been enjoying this.
I think honestly, I think it's probably the best way to end is like the bard sort of saying, "I wish the episode ends," and then the DM going, "Wow, in that what horrible way can I misconstrue this?"
Oh, now I'm just thinking, you know what? I'd rather be a Q and just